Keira Knightley is here after a breakout performance in Bend It Like Beckham. She found her voice in films like Pride and Prejudice and Atonement. Her latest role brings her to the hallowed pages of Leo Tolstoy. She plays the lead in Joe Wright and Tom Stoppard's adaptation of the classic Anna Karenina. Richard Corliss of Time magazine has written of her, "It's a nervy performance, acutely attuned to the volcanic changes a naive creature must enjoy and endure on her first leap into mad passion. She makes Anna Karenina an operatic romance worth singing about." I am pleased to have her back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Boy. There's so much to talk about with you. I so much look forward when you're here. Here's the cover of Vogue.
Yeah.
Love story, Keira Knightley, the man in her life and the role of a lifetime. I assume the role of a lifetime is this role.
It must be.
Yes, it must be.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's quite safe to say about
Did it turn out to be that way for you?
Well, I mean, not knowing what's going to happen in the future, I don't know that I can completely say that.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely the most challenging and probably one of the most rewarding parts I've ever played. Yeah.
So, but you've done Pride and Prejudice, you've done Atonement.
Yeah.
So were you readily open to the idea of doing this?
Yes, I was absolutely desperate. As soon as Joe Wright said, "Are you up for it?" I said, yes, yes, yes. You know, I mean, I think it was quite interesting because doing Pride and Prejudice was totally terrifying because that's a character that people love so much and women want to be her. And, you know, Anna is not that kind of a creature. She's a sort of very difficult, jewel-like creature, but she's not somebody that people want to be. So from that kind of perspective, it wasn't as terrifying as taking on something like Elizabeth Bennet. But it was definitely challenging. She is a very odd one.
Yes.
So trying to capture all of that was definitely a challenge.
How did you prepare for it? What did you do? Because you're working with a director who you already have a relationship with.
Yeah, definitely.
He understands you.
He does, and it's a wonderful relationship that we have, and I'm incredibly lucky for that. But you know, we hadn't tackled a creature like her before. We'd always tackled people who we could fall in love with, you know, and even in Atonement, Cecilia Tallis is a character who is very kind of icy, but you do fall in love with her. I'm not quite sure. The purpose of Anna Karenina is something very different, and she is there to be fallen in love with, but she is also there to be condemned. And actually trying to kind of navigate your way into playing somebody that has to be morally questionable is quite interesting. So we definitely had a lot of discussions about that, but really it was all based in the book. But
you had to, so first you read the book and then you read the script.
Yeah.
You know, and then you look for a way to...
A way in.
A way in. Is that what actors say?
Yeah, a way in. Yeah. I mean, I think normally when you're doing something based on a novel, you expect the kind of interior life of the character to be there, and most of your questions are answered for them. With Anna Karenina, and again, I think it's a question over whether Anna is meant to be the heroine or the anti-heroine. Tolstoy doesn't often explain what's going on in her head. It sort of seems, and people will disagree with this, but it seemed to me like he stands outside and he judges her. And trying to kind of figure out what was going on in her head and why she leaves her son, which is something that I think most people would find very difficult to understand. And I don't have children, but I found that very difficult to understand. You know, trying to kind of get your head around all of those things was quite tricky, but fascinating.
Would she say, "I had no choice, it was an uncontrollable force that drove me forward"?
Yes, I think you could say that. I think we came to the conclusion that it was almost like she was an eternal optimist. She kept thinking it was going to be all right. She kept thinking that there'd be a way that she'd be able to have everything. And sort of the moment that she realises that actually she can't is the moment that it's too late. But I think a lot of people would say, and there are certain times where she would say, "I don't have any choice, this is the only way that I can possibly do this." I'm not quite sure.
All right, take a look at this. This is where you and Count Vronsky, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, I love this phrase, share a moment. Here it is. So tell me about that scene. Tell me about the acting of that scene.
That scene was actually a reshoot, which came 6 months after we'd actually shot the main thing, which was about seeing them in the glory of the romance, because I think it's a story that gets very dark very quickly.
Yes.
And it does in the book. that side of the story. There's another side of the story that is very light and hopeful, and but so I think that scene was about seeing them in the midst of the romantic, wonderful part, but it's also about saying, well, I have a husband. What do you want me to do?
And I'd have to leave my child, which
and
is not what that's not what fatherhood and motherhood is about.
No. Exactly.
All right, here is, guess who's playing your husband?
Jude Law.
You know, a surprising role for him?
Yes, but he's a character actor, and I think because he's so handsome, I think people often forget that actually he's a character actor, and he's a wonderful character actor. So it sort of made a lot of sense when Joe said, I want you to play it.
All right, let's take a look at this. This is where you tell your husband of the aforeseen affair with Count Vronsky. Here it is. We were talking about the language here. I mean, it's nice to have words written for you by Tom Stoppard.
It is wonderful, and he is a very, very wonderful and interesting man. Yeah, we were really lucky because we did sort of about 3 weeks of rehearsal before we started, so we had Tom an awful lot throughout that, and he'd come in and give us lectures about the book. Yeah, pretty much. Talks, yeah. We'd all sit down, and he actually prepared... Yeah, he prepared a proper sort of half-hour talk.
And what did you think of, or what do you think of Joe's decision to stage it the way he did, and not to simply to make it in all these glorious places that this story took place? I think my first reaction when he told me was, oh, no. Here we go. Well, oh, no, why? Because...
Oh, no, because you had something that, you know, as a group of people that have worked together quite a lot, you think, OK, well, this is what we do, we know how to do this, you know, we've got Tom Stoppard, we've got all these people, this is going to be great, you know. But I think equally... me and Joe had been talking quite a lot over the last few years. We were meant to do another project a couple of years ago that didn't end up happening, and he was always very interested in this idea of breaking the fourth wall in cinema,
right.
Which you can do in theatre, but is obviously, you know, how to do that in film. And he's felt very constrained for a number of years by the idea of naturalism in film, and not being able to kind of break out and do something very different. So I kind of always knew that there was going to be a stylised aspect to this, because that's where his interests were going. I didn't quite realise how stylised.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that there was
But do you just trust the director? If you want to go there, I'll go with you.
You do if you know the director.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I didn't know... I think if I didn't know somebody, I would have been going, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean? What is this? How does this help the story? What is, you know... But I think that there was a real feeling that you've got... It's not just me and Joe, you know, it's the producers, it's the costume department and Sarah Greenwood, his designer, and it's a group of people that have worked together on a number of occasions. And I think at that point you have to do something that scares you, and you have to kind of not be safe, and you have to kind of try and push the boundaries. And I think we all felt like the idea was a little bit like jumping off a cliff, but we were all quite willing to do that together.
Yes, at that stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, it's only our career, it's only a bad movie or a good movie.
Well, I mean, it's slightly...
But you don't even think about career in this way.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think you have to really be pushing yourself. I think otherwise it's just not interesting for an audience. You know, if you see people doing exactly the same thing again and again and again, it gets boring. It gets boring for the person.
And it's if they mail it in.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that it is... I find it very exciting walking that line of failure. And we really didn't know throughout making this whether it was going to work or not. You know, I'd have Joe running to me halfway through a day going, have I gone too far? I'm like, no, it's, you know, and we'd all be kind of constantly going, OK, I think it can work. But
you've constantly, in conversation we've had, you've talked about sort of living with fear of failure and all of that stuff. You like that because...
in work. I mean, not necessarily in life in general, but in work.
Yeah. What was the relationship with Tolstoy and Anna?
Well, I think apparently at the beginning he actually intended to write a novel about Karenin. Karenin was meant to be the central character. And it was meant to be about a good man whose wife commits a crime against him. So it feels like, and it's my understanding, that the idea of Anna, she was always meant to be condemned. That was her purpose. And then during the writing of it, he fell in love with her.
He fell in love with the character he created.
Yeah. But I think because she's so... You do condemn her. I think you should condemn her. But there's a certain point in reading the novel and hopefully in, you know, seeing the film where you go, yeah, but am I any better than she is?
Don't you believe that she had no choice? You know? I mean, don't you believe you have a responsibility to your family, but also a responsibility to yourself? In the end, you don't want to go through life unhappy.
That's true.
You know, and if you don't take care of your happiness, no one else will.
That's true.
So you'd make the same decision if you were in the same place.
I suspect I would make the same decision.
Exactly right.
Absolutely. Which is, again, why I go back to, I completely understand the decision that she makes.
Yeah.
I horrendously understand, I think, leaving the Sun. I understand somebody that feels this moment of life and this moment of love like she's never felt it before, or lust, because I think there's an argument that it is that, and goes, that's what I want and I can't survive without it. I do understand that. Do I think that it's right?
No, it's not even a question.
No.
You know it's not right.
No, but what choice do you have?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what's so wonderful about the character.
And here's what's wonderful about you. This is Joe Wright at this very table talking about your evolution as an actress. Here it is.
When I first met Keira, she was 17, and she was this kind of goofy kid. And I was determined that whoever played Elizabeth Bennet should be the age that Jane Austen wrote the character. Right. And then we progressed quite swiftly onto Atonement. Right. And then I hadn't seen her for a couple of years after Atonement. She went through some kind of self-examination, I think. She went through a kind of quite a dark phase. She did some theatre. She chose not to go into the kind of big films, but made more sort of independent films. And then I met up with her again on the second Chanel commercial we did together, and I found that she'd changed quite a lot.
How had she changed?
She'd kind of she was stronger and more confident, more definite, rather, in her intellectual abilities and her creative abilities and in her sexuality, and she was a proper woman, who had lived a bit more.
So what'd you think of all that?
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dark period, he said.
Dark period.
What was the dark period?
The dark period.
Dark period.
Dark period. The dark period. I think I had a lot of success very early on, and I was incredibly fortunate for that success. I don't know that I dealt with it. I dealt with it in the way that I could.
How was that?
Which was kind of shutting myself away and sort of trying to not deal with it, really.
Yeah.
And I think I got to a moment where I just went, this is all a bit too, I just can't deal with any of this, don't want to deal with any of this. Yeah. And took a step back and sort of went off and didn't work for a year.
What did you do during that year?
What did I do? I took French lessons. I lived in Paris for a bit. Yeah. I went to Spain, I went to Italy, I went to Germany. I sort of did a lot of Europe and read a lot of books. Mostly about feminism.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Mostly.
Just understanding where women were today?
Yeah, kind of. A lot of that.
But did you develop this greater appreciation of sort of where women are, the empowerment of women, the
I also went, I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, absolutely, yeah. I did a lot of that. But I think it was hugely... I left school at 16, so I don't have
You were a goofy kid then, Josie.
I was a goofy kid. Yeah. I resent that. I don't think I was ever goofy.
You were never goofy?
No.
Yeah.
So I felt like I wanted to sort of take a year out and read, really.
Yeah,
and just... Yeah, it was fun. So I came out of that and started working again.
So how do you know when you're ready to get back on the train?
A friend of mine who is a director called Masih Tajuddin phoned up and said, come and do this film with me.
Yeah, and that was it?
Yeah, that was it.
But if he'd called 6 months early, would you have said, no, I can't, I'm not ready?
Yeah, I would definitely have said no.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and there's a particular thing with acting. I think I was very aware that I'd reached a brick wall, and the only thing with acting is that you're reflecting the world around you and you're understanding things on different levels depending on your experience. And if your experience is only a film set, which is kind of like a bubble, then you don't have that much to reflect. So,
are you the go-to person if you're thinking of a historical novel that has a defined female character?
I'd like to be.
You would?
Well, yeah.
You love this historical novel person.
I do love... I love historical novels.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing, having done so many costume dramas or whatever they are, you sort of go back, why do I keep getting drawn to these?
Yes.
And I don't know what the answer to that is. I think a lot of it is the idea that you can get completely lost in that fantasy world. You know, it's a great dramatic tool. You leave everything that you know behind you and you just dive into this other world where you can experience this other person's emotions on a whole other level. I find that very helpful.
I want to talk to you just a moment. We've never talked about this.
Okay.
Beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, just exquisite beauty. I mean, how do you... I don't know what the question is, but I mean, it's just the idea. Look at this. I mean, look at this. You know. I mean, don't you think that handsome and beautiful people have an advantage in life? Unless they screw it up.
Unless they really screw it up.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of Photoshop and great makeup and a lovely photographer. I mean, that does help. Good
you
lighting.
had advantages, didn't you?
Real advantages.
People knew how to find the best in you.
Well, absolutely. If we'd taken them when I woke up that morning, I don't think they would have looked that good.
It's so great to see you.
It's so great to see you.
It really is. Thank you.
Thanks for having me back.
Good. Let me tell you about the movie. Anna Karenina opens Friday, November 16th. Thank you for joining us. Next time.